right now? The fact that City SC seemingly can't lose a game, or the fact that they've just moved on from two of their best players and all while this is going on?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think the fact that they can't lose a game right now, having already moved on from two of those said players, I think tells you that they're in a pretty good spot with where they want to go, the foundation they're building. Obviously, this is a massive rebuild when you go from high-energy soccer to now wanting to possess the ball, be better with the ball, be progressive with your thinking, having to overhaul the roster and doing so. So I think they're both very interesting. But when you go undefeated and you've won games after moving on from Hartel and winning your first game without Löwen, that in a nutshell, I find very intriguing.
Generally speaking, the feeling is that those guys don't totally fit into the system, and also they're at the tail end of their peak level, and they want to get maybe younger, faster guys coming in. Do you generally agree with that assessment, with what City's trying to do and the motivation for moving on for those players?
Well, that's not for Hartel. Hartel is a family decision 100%. They were trying to re-sign him to an extension. They were trying to offer him a new deal. They were doing anything they could to keep Hartel, but that was a family decision. And Hartel and his wife and kids needed to leave immediately, and that's why they accommodated that. Now, I read Tom Timmerman's article. I read the quotes. I think they're being misguided because knowing Corey as well as I do, I don't think he has any bias against older players. I think fans want to hear that because they read the quote, but the quote came after a 5 to 10 minute discussion about City 2 players, and City 2 players being much more younger and similar to the way Corey and Wilfred Nancy and that group did in Columbus with Laurent Courtois and so forth. And so he brought up Löwen in that manner, but didn't say his name and said outgoing players. But everyone naturally said, well, that's because Löwen's this. Well, Hugo Kuipers is, 9 days younger, and they would have signed him immediately. So I think, listen, Eduard Löwen was a massive part of this team and this city. He went through a horrific personal situation with his wife and cancer and all of that. And so naturally fans are going to be upset about it. I can be a little bit more objective because I can see it from a different lens. If Eduard Löwen fit into the system, his age has nothing to do with it. And so that's why I think fans are just looking for something. And listen, I think the energy from the fans is completely normal and healthy and all of that. It creates responsibility, accountability, all of that. But until St. Louis City spends real money on a designated player, number 9, that scores goals for a living, the fans are going to be upset. And I don't think that's a bad thing either.
Why do you feel like it's they haven't done that, and they've moved on from a good number of players, and they've been some good? There's folks that they've brought in who have done a nice job, but in terms of that true impact goal scorer, they don't have them. That money is not being spent. Why do you feel like that's not happening?
Because they don't want to cut off their nose, spite their face, and Corey Wray is going to make sure he gets his profile for the system and the manager that he has right now. He wants to make sure he gets the 9 that Yoann can utilize, and he's not going to spend $20 to $25 million the way Toronto spent on Josh Sargent if the player doesn't fit the profile. And so he's going to be a little pragmatic about it. You and I just started this conversation with them being on a 12, 13 game unbeaten run, whatever the streak is, and so they're not going to. Now, losing Hartel is massive because I'd argue with anyone within City, yes, you get your designated player number 9 and spend big money, but that player would have been much more impactful if Hartel stays. And so I think the replacement of Hartel is much more important until even when they get the 9 because they need both. I'm going to be straight to the point. They need both because this system really suits those kinds of players. And if you get both of those players right, you're talking about contending in the Western Conference.
I don't think I've really talked to you about the system much because we had many conversations going back to the Bradley Carnell era and everything that happened after that under Lutz, and I knew you at times were okay with what they were doing, but in general, I can remember some criticism of the system. The system that is in place now under Damet and Corey Wray, do you like that system? Is that something that you're in favor of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No doubt, 100%. You demand the ball, you want the ball. You press when you need to. Your counter press is always in good situation. Your resting defense, all of the buzzwords that are now used in world football, everything about Damet's system is that. Now, similar to a Wilfried Nancy, to a Laurent Courtois, the players need to fit the system. Now, I would always argue that any good manager will suit the system around the players that he has. However, listen, and I've said this to Bradley Carnell, to Lutz Pfannenstiel, and everyone that followed that. I'm never a fan of that style. I think it hinders any kind of creativity. It hinders any kind of real positive energy. I think St. Louis as a whole, as a city, the way youth soccer's played in that city, they want to possess the ball. They want to be good with the ball. They want to be entertaining with the ball, all of that. Now, the first season under St. Louis City, was it entertaining? Absolutely. But they got exposed immediately in the biggest game against Sporting Kansas City because they didn't know how to possess the ball. They didn't know how to break down a team in a low block, and so they were exposed very quickly. Yoann Damet is building that foundation of the house where now when you build the first and second floor, you can expand and be more progressive. But St. Louis City, they need to entertain the fans. And that history in that city, you and I both know it very well, they demand being good with the ball, in my opinion, and I think stylistically this suits them better.
Does it say something about Corey Wray, just the confidence he has? Because there are some really tough decisions being made, and it's an organization in short existence that fan favorites have gone away, whether it was a Nowitzki, a Vasilev, a Klaus, like just up and down players who have connected to the city, and now it's Hartel and Löwen. They move on from them. That's happened a lot, but now it's happening under this new regime. Isn't there a confidence that goes along with that you're going to put the system in, you're going to get the guys you want, and everything else kind of be darned because you know where you want to go?
Yeah, but in fairness to St. Louis City in the previous regime, that was their inaugural season. So no matter what they did, some of those players are going to really connect with the city. That doesn't mean it's right. And I was listen, before the playoffs started in the first season, I said St. Louis City would lose to Sporting Kansas City. And a lot of the fans and the listeners of your show right now were really upset with my prediction. But I saw the glimpses of it. I could sense that there were cracks in it. And then the second year was dismal, and the third year even worse. And so if you're going to hire someone and change it, like a Corey Wray, then Corey Wray absolutely is 180 degrees different than anything that was there before. Then you're going to have moves like this. The only move that I think could be criticized, questioned on some level is the Marcel Hartel move. That's the only move. Any of the other moves, you can't convince me. You will not convince me. That I'm not saying they weren't difficult on the emotion, but the business side of things, they were smart moves in changing the system. Now, I will be very critical. This team should have a 9 by now. And I've even said this to Corey, so this is nothing new from anyone within City. This team should have a 9 by now. You've had 6 months. You've had the chance. Ownership has told you you've got a checkbook. I'm a little surprised there's no 9. Now, I'm not saying there isn't going to be a 9 because Damian Downs right now is potential on a loan for 6 months, and then you don't need to shoehorn yourself into a long-term contract. But if they want to compete in the West, they want to win the Open Cup, they've got to get a 9 in this transfer window, and that's going to end very shortly here.
Sunday Night Soccer coming up. They're going to match up against FC Dallas. This is always one on Sunday Night Soccer. It's always one of the prime matchups. I know you enjoy when City's able to be in this spotlight.
Yeah, I love it, buddy. This is going to be a blast. I get to come home, and I get to listen to my family tell me about everything that's wrong with me. I'm looking forward to it.
By the way, you know what? I saw you on social media when the BMW Championship here, really taking joy in how well the city was being played out on a national standpoint. So I think a lot of people appreciate your continued love for St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fans, St. Louis fans will show up for anything, but what they did, over 155,000 fans for the BMW Championship to set a record. I've spoken to a couple people at the PGA Tour. Well done.